Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to call to order the October 14, 2015 meeting of the Committee on Strategic
Look, we have Finance, Audit, and Budget, I'm sorry.
Planning. Wait.
Finance, Audit, and Budget, sir, I'm sorry.
But
It gets
the,
confusing
the,
sometimes.
the
Mr.
finance budget and
Thank you. Mr. Irvine.
Here.
Mr. Youngblood.
Here.
Dr. Sen.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Ms. Alva Rosales.
Here.
Chairman Silva.
Alejandro Silva. Yes. Here.
We have a quorum of the committee with 6 members present.
Our next order of business is the review of the finance report. Tom. Good morning.
Tom McCone, Acting CFO. So here we're going to review the August financial results. At the start, we start with system-generated revenues. You see Fair and Pass revenue is favorable to budget. This is the second month in a row where we have favorability to budget on our Fair and Pass revenue, helping us make up for what we didn't see in the first quarter of this year. The reduced fare subsidy, again, we're expecting to receive half of that. This is allocated as part of the state budget. We don't know what will finally be allocated in the state budget, but we're booking half of it based on some of the legislation that we've seen. Non-fare box revenue is slightly lower than budget. This is due to non-capital grant revenue, so that's offset by an expense on the expense side. So you'll see favorability in other expenses as a result of that. So overall revenue, system-generated revenue down $1.5 million. We know that's because we're receiving less on the reduced fare subsidy. The average fare is up slightly to budget and to last year as well, which is a positive sign as well. Year-to-date revenues, again, slightly negative on Fair and Pass revenue. The last couple of months have helped reduce that negative variance. The reduced fare subsidy, again, we're booking a sort of a straight line to make sure that we finish at half of what we had anticipated. Non-fare box revenue is up slightly. That's because we're seeing additional parking lot revenue, and we had some additional timing where we got some revenues sooner than we expected this year. So revenue in total down by $10 million, and that matches the amount that we've reduced off of our expectation from the state for our reduced fare reimbursement. And again, average fare is a penny more than budgeted, again, a positive sign. New for this month, and at the President's request, we're introducing a ridership report, and this will show system ridership along with rail and bus ridership to provide a little bit more insight on our Fair and Pass revenue. On the rail system, you see ridership was up 1.9% in the month of August versus last year, so strong growth on the rail side. Bus was up slightly, so I'd say bus is stabilized. You can see both for the month and for the year. Overall, the system was up 1% year over year on the month and 0.5% year to date. So positive growth on the ridership side.
Is the trend in train higher everywhere in the U.S.?
Yeah, what we've seen as we look and we benchmark across the country is that rail ridership is up across all of our peer agencies. So this is consistent with what we see with other peer agencies. On the expenses side, labor was basically flat to budget. Material, negative to budget. Again, we expect material to be negative to budget for some of the reasons we've talked about in prior months, although we've narrowed the gap in August, which is good to see. Favorability in fuel and in power. It was a relatively mild August, which meant that it was more efficient to run buses and trains, so we saved on some of our consumption of both fuel and power. Security services, flat to budget. Other expenses, that's the favorability I mentioned on the revenue side from not having those capital grants passed through on the expenses side as well. So overall, some slight favorability on the expenses side, consistent with what we've been seeing on a monthly basis. bring it to the end year-to-date. Unfavorability in materials, but that's made up for with favorability in labor, fuel, power, and our other categories. So you can see total operating expenses favorable to budget. This offsets the negative revenue that we have. So we continue to project a balanced budget. We should have no problem achieving that this year. And on the fuel and power side, we've locked in pricing both for this year and to the extent we can for next year to give us some price and budget certainty as we finish this year and as we move into 2016. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Any questions?
Got it.
Go ahead.
So, Tom, going back to page 6, I notice this is the first time in a few months that we've seen labor in terms of a negative variance. Can you speak to why in August we're seeing this number now?
Yeah, so it's a small amount, but you're right. This is the first time that we've been negative recently on the labor side. What we had is we had slightly more overtime in August. There are a few more special events, a little bit more construction than we had originally anticipated, and it's happening on the weekends and on off hours, so we have to run overtime to make up for those. So our overtime numbers were a little bit higher for the month of August. We don't expect that to be a trend that continues. We think it was unique to August because of the number of events and the construction events as well.
All right.
Does it have anything to do with weather?
Well, the weather in August was, I think the weather was okay, so I think it was more the events themselves.
More
But the
the events.
favorability on the fuel and the power, that was because we had a milder August than you'd expect. We didn't have a lot of 90-degree plus days.
Any other questions?
What do we expect with the Cup games? That's also would increase labor costs, wouldn't it, slightly?
Yeah, so you're going to have increased labor costs, right? Because you're going to have a few more folks to cover the special events, right? And you're going to run a little bit more service. But from the ridership standpoint, it's more full fare ridership, so you expect to make that up on the revenue side. It's more full fare ridership. A lot of it happens when we have service out there anyway, so we're using some of our existing capacity. So we hope that it's at least a wash and it may be slightly positive for us as well.
Well, go Cubs anyway.
Absolutely, it's always a good thing to see the Cubs winning.
Tom, just one more question. How much fuel have we purchased for FY16?
So for FY16, we have purchased 80% of our projected volume up until October, which is where we have contract authority for. You'll see in the finance section, we want to extend that through the end of the year. Okay. So we've used all of our board-given authority to purchase 80% of it up through October, and then we want to extend the contract so we can do that for the rest of the year.
And then when would you start in terms of FY17 purchase?
So we would look to, we need to extend we're rebidding and go out to the RFP process for a new fuel contract. So we need to get that in place. We expect to have that in place in the spring. And then that gives us a few months to look for favorability in pricing, to lock in that pricing in anticipation of putting the budget together for 2017.
Okay.
Any other questions? So we're going to move to the approval of the committee minutes of September 9th, 2015. The minutes were previously distributed. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
May I have a
Second.
second? Will the secretary call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Alva Rosales?
Yes.
Chairman Silva?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing a lease of retail concession space located at 219 South Dearborn Street, Chicago, Illinois, Blue Line. Carol, good morning.
Morning. So this first ordinance would authorize a lease to the Baglers LLC, Jackson Blue, which is owned by Mr. Jodem Torres at the Jackson Blue Line station. It'll be operated as a coffee and pastry shop. The space is currently vacant. The lease is for 10 years with 2 5-year options, has an initial annual rent of $16,400 and an annual escalation of 3%. The board has previously awarded leases at the Blue Line Jefferson Park Station and the Red Line Jackson Station. Those were in July, and the Red Line Lake Station in August. So this will be Mr. Torres's 4th CTA concession. He's created a separate entity, a separate legal entity for this concession. but the CTA has obtained a corporate guarantee from the primary Bagler's entity. We received 3 bids for this space. The Bagler's bid of $80 per square foot was the highest and above the market rate opinion value of 60 to 70 obtained from JLL. The net present value of the lease over the initial 10-year period is right about $160,000, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
No questions, that's, to be that high above the appraised value of the site.
Good.
And he's just selling coffee and pastries?
He is, yeah. We've gone to more of a suggested minimum rent concept in this from JLL because our spaces are a little bit difficult to value,
Okay,
and they're also small. This one's about 250 square feet.
okay.
If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item in the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance consenting to a sublease of a portion of 120 North Racine Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. Carol?
So at the August board meeting, the board authorized a lease with Sterling Bay for approximately 85,000 square feet on the first and second floors of the 120 North Racine building owned by CTA that was formerly occupied by the city's Department of Buildings. At that time, we indicated that Sterling Bay was planning on subleasing the space, but that any subleases would have to come back to the board for approval. This ordinance would authorize a sublease to Silver Chalice, which is a digital sports media company that owns and operates digital networks and a standalone technology division. The term of the lease is for 18 months with 3 one-year options to renew. And it's for approximately 18,000 square feet of the total. Sterling Bay will continue to be responsible for all rent and its proportionate share of building operating expenses. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Is that a rubber stamp only, okay, when it comes back to us, or do we have something to say in the sublease?
Well, the lease says that our approval can't be unreasonably withheld, but we do have our security department review it. We spend some time from a financial perspective looking at the prospective subtenant, just to make sure it's compatible with our uses. So this is a technology-based company, so they operate, they have Campus Insider, which has kind of a digital sports, college sports network. And they also provide content for 120 Sports, which is really looking to be the ESPN of the digital media.
Any questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for
So moved.
approval?
Second.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Carol. Thank you. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of blanket railroad protective liability insurance for policy year November 1st, 2015 to October 31st, 2016. Steve Wood, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. We're coming before the board for approval of our blanket railroad protective insurance policy. This is an annual policy that the CTA has had in place for 6 years and will be renewed from November 1, 2015 to October 31, 2016. The policy is a blanket program covering all CTA contractors and certain non-contractors who perform work within 50 feet of the CTA's railroad right-of-way. The CTA enrolls the businesses and prorates the cost of the insurance across the construction projects so that the CTA is not out of pocket for the cost of this insurance. Our insurance broker, Mesero, again marketed the renewal of this annual policy, and the incumbent insurer, Liberty Surplus Insurance, offered the best price. There was more competition for our business this year, and the market is more favorable to insureds currently, so Mesero was able to negotiate a price reduction of about 25% for the average weighted premium compared to last year's policy. We're very happy with Liberty's service and responsiveness in administering this contract for us, and we recommend renewal of this policy with the incumbent insurer. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is 25% pretty much, okay, the price of, the lower price, okay, of the blanket insurance?
So the way the insurance premiums are structured, they're sort of in tiers. So it's more expensive for the $0 to $10 million projects, slightly less expensive for 10 to 60, and then less expensive for over 60 million. Obviously, the premium increases as the underlying value of the project increases, but in general, there's a weighted premium, and this year, based on the projected construction projects that we have for the next 2015 to 16 year, the weighted premium is about 25% less, so it's quite favorable to the CTA.
Any questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the windows for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Our final order of business is the review of 11 purchase and sales award recommendations. Presenter is Ellen McCormick.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Ellen. We will start with contract numbers A1 and A2. Any questions? No questions? A1, A2? We then review numbers B1 and B2. Any questions?
Not necessarily a question, I was just looking at the amount of the change order. Do you think this was pretty much, Chris, will this wrap up the job? You think this is the last change order we'll see on this project?
It's certainly the last change order of any substance, and yes, I will believe that we'll wrap it up. We'll finish the actual work out there, actually ahead of schedule this fall. We're currently in punch list. We're done with all the reroutes. And I'd also like to note on this particular change order that we originally got this as an alternate on the bid price, and we couldn't afford it at that time. It was a higher cost. It was about $2 million. We were able to work with the contractor and negotiate that price down by $500,000. And at the point at which we considered it, we had enough contingency to do that work, and we still finished ahead of schedule.
In the B2, can you just give us a little bit more color, okay, in it?
So the B2 you have in front of you is a design build to complete the 95th station. So we originally entered into a CMGC contract. That contract presupposed that we could negotiate a guaranteed maximum price with the contractor. We were unable to come to price agreement with them, so we quickly rebid the project in order to minimize the impact of that to schedule. What you're seeing in front of you is the design build rebid. We were able to rebid that in record time, approximately 30 days from the conclusion of those negotiations. We feel very confident, having received 3 bids, all of them very cost competitive, that we have a project here that not only respects our intent in terms of the original schedule, but also the overall budget of the project. Prices were the proposals rather were very cost competitive.
Any questions in B2?
Sure. Just, and Chris, it'll be designed in a way that it'll facilitate the red line extension when that happens, right?
Yeah, one of the core principles of the design was to understand and work very closely with the planning department on what the proposed alignment was, so that as we placed the new terminal on the south side, we understood what that alignment was and we could respect it in the design.
And directors, if I could just add, with respect to DVE participation on this project, the contractor Passion Millhouse Joint Venture has committed to the 27%, but they've also committed to not using the 15% joint venture portion at this time to meet their 27% goal.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So, and Mary, and that's great, but here's what I would like for the board to eventually, you can hand it out to us at some point in time. I still like to see what the DBE participation will be for each of the DBEs. It's got to be determined. And so I'm glad that they're not using the 15% credit they could have gotten by using Millhouse, but still, I would like for the board to know what the percentage of participation is going to be for each of the companies working on the project.
We'll make sure we update you regularly on as the trade work packages are accepted.
Yeah, and then my final comment, I've always considered the 27% to be the floor, not the ceiling. So, you know, we're happy that they're meeting what we recommended, but again, that should be the floor, not the ceiling in terms of community participation.
Definitely.
Let's move to C1 to C3. Any questions?
On C1, and this, I know this is I think it's a HR function or budget function. Do we expect to have this position filled prior to the 6 months? I know this is a 6-month extension.
Yeah, this is actually, it's a finance payroll position, and obviously end of year is critical time for payroll. So we're actively looking to recruit somebody to fill this role in-house. And so, you know, we would anticipate and hope not to use the entirety of this contract, because as soon as we bring somebody in-house, then we won't need to use this contract.
You talk a little bit about the C3, please.
C3? Okay. So this is the investment management firm for the supplemental retirement program. So this was put out to competitive bid at the 5-year end of the previous contract. I think we got favorable pricing for it. So I think it's going to be a benefit to the plan and provide the agency savings going forward.
We don't have DBE participation in this one.
So this request for proposals for the investment consulting services, there are limited to no DBE participation that can be included within this supplemental plan, but it was analyzed for participation.
It was under this. Thank you.
Is it possible for the board to find out at some point what the diversity is in terms of the management of the supplemental retirement plan?
Yes, we can definitely look into that.
Okay.
Any other questions on this? We're gonna move to contract number E1. Any questions? Let's move to F1. Any questions? And finally, we will review contract numbers G1 through G2. Any questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place these 11 contracts on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Since there's no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend approval of the omnibus?
So moved.
Second.
Will the secretary call the roll?
Yes. Ms. Irvine?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Alice?
Yes.
Chairman Silva?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a second. We're adjourned.
Chairman, whenever you wish to begin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of Chicago Transit Board for October 14, 2015. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes, Ms. Irvine?
Here?
Mr. Youngblood?
Here.
Dr. Sen?
Here.
Ms. Alvarez Alice?
Here.
Mr. Silva?
Here.
Chairman Peterson?
Here.
We have a quorum of the board present with 6 members, sir.
Thanks, Greg. The first order of business today is public comment. Greg?
Yes, sir. We have 4 public comment speakers. I'll ask the first 3 to come up as a group. In order, Alderman Pawar of the 47th Ward, and then Alderman Thompson of the 11th Ward, and Alderman Smith of the 43rd Ward. However you wish to speak is up to the order that you wish, folks. So just please be seated. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak this morning. I want to thank a group of people standing behind me. especially Tom Galkey, Ruby Pinto, along with the Pine Tree Club of Castle, and all of the members who make up the CTA 31, CTA 11, Crosstown Bus Coalition, as well as the Bridgeport Alliance. I'd also like to thank my colleagues, Alderman Pawar and Alderman Smith, in particular, working closely with Alderman Pawar. He's been very supportive throughout this entire process, as well as working with the CTA. These past months that I've been involved with this, since May of my election, and I know there's been a lot of, many more months and years before me, but the past months, we had very good conversations, and I appreciate the willingness to work with the CTA on the 31st Street bus. This bus represents a great collaboration between the north side and south side, the 47th Ward, 43rd Ward, and the 11th Ward. Working together to reinstate buses does not just involve government, but it's truly a grassroots campaign involving residents and neighbors of the 47th, 43rd, and 11th Ward. I believe that the demographic, although I'm aware that CTA had canceled this 31st Street bus many years ago, I believe that the demographics and the population have changed from Ashland to the lakefront. We have also added many businesses along this route, which the bus would act as a catalyst for those businesses. There's strong community support for access to places such as Mercy Hospital and U.S. Cellular Field. The bus is needed to connect the orange line at Ashland to the red line along the Dan Ryan and allow people to access the new beach at 31st Street as well as the museum campus. Today we are asking the CTA to conduct a survey or a pilot program to determine the feasibility of the 31st Street bus. Again, we want to thank the CTA for your consideration, Alderman Pawar and Alderman Smith for their support, as well as the Bridgeport Alliance and the Crosstown Bus Coalition.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Amaya Pawar, I'm the Alderman of the 47th Ward. Congratulations to President Carter and Chairman Peterson, members of the board. This is now, I think, our third or fourth time here presenting our case to restore service along Lincoln Avenue, the number 11 bus, but also I'm here in collaboration with Alderman Thompson and neighbors from Bridgeport in a joint effort to talk about bus equity, that this isn't a north side issue, that it isn't just a south side issue, that bus equity is a north and south side issue. And, you know, we like to call ourselves the Crosstown Bus Coalition. And I know in the past I haven't always been the easiest person to work with, especially when it comes with the CTA, and I own that. But I'm here today to ask that we reopen the conversation and extend a hand in partnership to say, let's see if there's a way we can make this work. I'm not here to be contentious or vitriolic. I just want to make sure that you hear us when it comes to the bus, because it's not political, it's not theater. I have a lot of seniors in my community where the train, while it may be 2 or 3 blocks away, it's just not possible for them to use the train. I have a lot of students who relied on the bus to get to and from Lincoln Park High School, and a lot of young families who just got around the community using the bus because the train just was not something that made sense for them, because it get from point to point rather than throughout the neighborhood. Lincoln Avenue is starting to see a bit of a renaissance after the recession, and we have a lot of significant developments moving on Lincoln Avenue, but I believe the only way to make sure that we sustain that success is to bring back the number 11, make sure that people in my community, seniors in my community, most vulnerable in my community, have a way to get around. And so I'm asking that you hear us today. We're not going to give up, but I also want you to know that I'm here in partnership. So I've got a letter that I'd like to present to the board and to President Carter that has been signed by every elected official that represents part of the stretch of Lincoln Avenue, which was eliminated. So it's been signed by myself, Senate President John Cullerton, Senator Staines, Representative Harris, Representative Williams, Commissioner Gaynor, Commissioner Fitchie, and my colleague, Alderman Michelle Smith. So I'm here in partnership. Let me know if there's anything I can do, and I want to make sure that my colleague Alderman Smith has enough time to speak.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. I'm Alderman Michelle Smith from the 43rd Ward. I want to thank all the people who have come out today from the 43rd Ward and other wards to ask for crosstown equity and the restoration of the number 11 bus. And I want to thank Alderman Pawar for his leadership on this issue. I'm coming today because I wanted to give you an idea of some coming events in our neighborhood that will really lead to an increased demand for this bus line. Lincoln Avenue did see some hard times as a result of the recession. We also lost really the single largest employer on the line, which is Children's Memorial Hospital. However, that employer, that development will be coming online beginning this winter with construction. There's also that will have over 500 residential units and 100,000 square feet of retail. We'll also have a significant development with 200 units on Lincoln Avenue. It's called Lincoln Center, CENTER, TRE, next to the Apollo Theater. So this area of Lincoln Park is experiencing a financial, commercial, and cultural renaissance. And it's part of our plan to have to really support all the cultural institutions along Lincoln Avenue, which include Lincoln Hall, the Apollo Theater, Victory Gardens, and several clubs that are within just a few short feet away, like Kingston Mind and Blues. So as part of that, we are trying, of course, to encourage people to come to these venues via public transportation instead of cars. We're trying to encourage, of course, get away from car-driven development. And that is in addition to the existing problems for our seniors of really struggling with being able to get places. We have 2 significant senior buildings with, I believe, 500 units in total at 2640 North Sheffield, 2720 North Sheffield, which are located right on the line. So even though the 43rd Ward section of the Lincoln bus is really the shortest section, it's just from Fullerton to Diversey, it's a very, very critical one for commerce that links our residents to the library, Old Town School, and all the commercial things that you have been hearing about for a long time. But as well, it brings others to us. So I think now is the opportunity to really relook at the numbers again and restore this valuable service. Well, thank you very, very much for your consideration. I look forward to working with you, and I want to say that we've enjoyed excellent relations with the CTA and have always gotten wonderful cooperation, and a special thanks to your wonderful government affairs people who have always been great to us. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, one thing Alderman Pawar mentioned was the other elected officials. We also have Alderman Dowell, Alderman Burns, and Alderman Cardenas have all provided letters of support for this bus, as well as some of the state elected officials, State Senator Tony Munoz, Congressman Lipinski, and we'll provide those letters of support as well for this route that we're looking to re-engage on 31st from Ashland to the lakefront.
Well, let me just say on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come down. We will absolutely have the staff follow up with you. I'm glad to hear about the new development coming along the 11th line, especially the old Children's Hospital site. And again, we will definitely have the staff follow up with each of you and the aldermen who are not here. I'll make sure, I think most of you know Gerald Nichols, but we'll definitely have the staff follow up. And again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come down this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Excuse me, anyone who plans to leave, if you would please step aside, then we'll begin with the rest of the meeting. Thank you very much for coming down. Taylor, it'll just be a few minutes.
So we don't have other speakers, right?
We have one more speaker, yes. Chairman, we have one more public comment speaker.
They organize these guys.
Yeah, Mr. McGann, hand it up. Sure. Okay, thank you. Just sit right there. Just wait for it to clear. If any of the staff wants to be reseated, that's fine. And Chairman of the board, we have one more public comment speaker, Ms. Taylor Schaub. If I'm pronouncing it correctly, please address the board. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Taylor Schaub, and I'm a student at the Illinois Institute of Technology, and I'm here today on behalf of my iPro class, which iPro is interprofessional project, which takes students from different academic disciplines and puts them in the same course for us to solve a feasible problem in the world. Location-wise, we try to focus on Chicago. So our project this semester, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with the location, is the Clinton Green Line Station, Green and Pink Line Station, and the Ogilvie Station. And our problem began by connecting, is there a way that we can connect the Clinton Station with the Ogilvie Station with a more streamlined passage instead of having the Metro users walk all the way south of the station to exit and then walk on the street side to Clinton. So that was our main question that we started with this semester, and we've gone through, if you look at the packet, we have a page about our process that we've gone through so far, which is documenting existing conditions, researching different ridership data, and we've been in contact with different people from Metro, CTA, RTA, CDOT, kind of explaining the project and seeing if we can get any feedback from them. And from there, we've done some basic schematic design development. And in the packet as well, I'm not going to go through all three options that we've sort of proposed, but we have definitely sat down and reviewed different options for this project. And just in lieu of our semester schedule, we obviously cannot go through the year-long process of formally submitting the project and going about it in a formal way. So I'm here today to present the project to the CTA board just for feedback, basically. If anyone has any additional information, I have my contact information on the back, and there is a lot more text within the packet just to read up a little more about it. So if there's any feedback in terms of we think this project would possibly work or we don't think it would work, our semester ends mid-November. So we are trying to get into as many meetings as we can just to propose it and to have sort of a gauge of our findings and our research. Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for coming down and presenting this to the board. I'm sure we will have someone get back to you before the semester ends in November. But again, thank you and your fellow students for putting this together and again, sharing it with the board. And we'll definitely have someone from President Carter's staff follow up with you. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schaub. And Chairman Pearson, that concludes the public comment section of today's meeting.
Thanks, Greg.
Just one question, Michelle. Can I find your report somewhere, the detailed report somewhere on the web? Or somewhere?
It is not online, but if you send me an email, I can send you a digital copy of our research and our
Send it to Greg.
Okay, no issue.
Thank you.
I'll do that later this afternoon. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next order of business today is the approval of the September 9th, 2015 board minutes that were previously distributed. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 9th, 2015.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Ms. Irvine?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thank Greg. Our next order of business today is executive session. It is my understanding, Karen, that there will not be an executive session today.
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay, our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Silva.
The Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this morning. The committee reviewed the finance report and approved the September 2015 committee minutes. The committee also reviewed and recommend for board approval the following: an ordinance authorizing a lease of retail concession space located at 219 South Dearborn Street, an ordinance consenting to a sublease of a portion of 120 North Racine Avenue, Chicago. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of blanket railroad protective liability insurance for policy year November 1st, 2015 through October 31st, 2016. 11 purchase and sales award recommendations. The committee recommended approval of all of these items and place them on the omnibus for approval. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Director Silva. May I now have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Silva?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Dr. Sen?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yeah.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Our next order of business is a construction report. Chris?
Chris Puchel, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. So we have 5 projects up here today. The first one, Attraction Power Project, Kimball, Princeton, and State. We continue on time and on budget with this project. We are in the process of turning on the various pieces of equipment that are involved with this. So as you well understand, we're reconstructing existing substations and adding capacity, particularly in key parts of the rail system, to support rail growth, rail ridership growth in those areas. The real trick on this project is actually replacing the existing equipment and fixing the buildings while we are still providing power. So on the new substations, the real challenge was all the underground work that was associated here. In this particular project, the real challenge is sort of coordinating the installation of new equipment and the turning off of old equipment. So in general, we've completed the renovations on the exteriors of these buildings. We have commissioned and proofed all the existing new traction power equipment and are in the process of turning it on at the various substations. The substation that's furthest along in this project is the Princeton substation, and followed by the other 2. But in any case, we're kind of in the same basic state with all of them, where we're starting to turn on various pieces of equipment after the commissioning of it. So that's good news. I'll probably report on this project for a couple of more months as we turn on all those different breakers to actually provide power, but certainly by the end of the year, we'll be wrapping this up and taking it off the report. Here you see one of the trickiest projects was the State Street substation. This is an older substation in the South Loop area. Provides power both to the elevated tracks in this area and the State Street subway. You can see some of the new equipment. It also involved extensive renovations to this older building, both tuck pointing, new roof, and various other types of environmental work as well. 95th Terminal Improvement Project. I'm reporting not now on the new project, but instead on the advanced packages. The biggest one of this is the advanced package number 2. That is the installation or construction of the part of the South Terminal foundations. That work will wrap up as the new work begins in the spring of this year. You can see many elements of this work. This is the project is sort of in the pit and concrete stage, where I keep showing you guys pictures of pits and concrete being poured, but it is moving along. Those of you that drive by have probably seen folks out there working, or the walls that are coming up on the side of the expressway. Again, rebar and the walls that are getting constructed and poured. Jack and bore pits. These are big pits that we have drilled or built on either side of the expressway in order to run cables and connect the 2 terminals on the north and the south side of 95th. Wilson Transfer Station continues on time and on budget. I have some really good pictures here that I want to rush through, but I want to get to. We are in the process of constructing the tracks to the far west of the station in this particular phase. In particular, the challenges of constructing all the caissons on the far northern end of this project. There's a lot of caissons that are sort of threaded in between existing city infrastructure that cause us a lot of challenge and a lot of care as we install. One of the big challenges in general to these large station projects is really coordinating these big caissons, which we need to support both the structure and in some elements of the station, and the existing city infrastructure, which in many cases can be over 100 years old. I'll show you some pictures of this. So this is the one that, it's a little bit in the distance, but essentially now, this picture was taken a little bit ago, but this structure now extends all the way to Broadway on the north. So you can really see what we're doing here, which is to kind of build the structure a little bit to the west, put an improved alignment in there, and then kind of step that structure over. And at the end of the day, we won't be nearly as far to the east as we are. We will have kind of shoved the whole station over to the west, which not only improves the alignment, it also improves the viability of the Gerber building as a future development, because we move the tracks away from that Gerber building, and it ends up being, I think, a more viable commercial enterprise to have concession and retail and other spaces there for that community, because it's not shoved right underneath the tracks. It has a little more breathing room, and you can really see it for a building, and it has a better lease and or rent potential. New track 1 deck framing. So this is really, we are doing a closed deck in this area. So this station, one of the many ways that we're improving it, again, this isn't just a station project, it's an infrastructure project. The track in this section is an enclosed deck, which is similar to what we did at Belmont and Fullerton. It means we can run more service to this area, yet have less impact on our community because there's less noise for the community in terms of how the track works in relationship to the station. So a big improvement here. This is the deck upon which the track will be constructed. This is the structure upon which the deck is built. I believe this is right on the side of Wilson. Ravenswood Loop Connector, this is a project you considered earlier in terms of the change order. This project is on time and on schedule, although I think my vice president would say it's ahead of schedule, maybe just a little bit. But in any case, we have finished all the reroutes associated with this project and are just doing the punch list. The punch list work will wrap up by the end of this year, probably by the end of the construction season, which is really around the holidays. And we do have one change order coming through beyond the one we approved today, but it's a credit, closing out some of the allowances. So minor issue that will be in front of you before the end of the year. Really a picture, this is again an elevated track project for the tracks between Armitage and the Mart, a vital part of our rail system that really connects and enhances some of the work we did in the Brown Line expansion project. Most of the work was done on in the weekends, on the overnight. Purple Line Express is a project up on the corridor between Lawrence and Howard, improving the 2 tracks there. It's a Purple Line project, but it benefits many of our customers. It's really the 2 outer tracks up in the area that I just talked about. It's underway. We beg the patience of our passengers. There are a number of slow zones out there. We're working very quickly to address those. This project as well will be done by the end of the year. So an accelerated project to deliver better and faster tracks to our customers. You can see the work there. Again, this is kind of on the far east and west tracks in that corridor between Lawrence and Howard. And that concludes my report.
Only question, it's not a question. When you get to the end of Wilson and 95th Street, and I know 95th Street is a ways off, be interested to hear about some of the technology improvements at these stations. You know, we always see the tracks, the pits, I'm just trying to think, what is it the residents stand on, the citizens stand on when they get ready to board. We always see that, but I'm always curious about the technology upgrades, the platform. So we see the platforms, we see the rail, you know, the ties and all of that. But I'd be curious to know, again, as you get to the end of projects, what kind of technology upgrades will the residents be able to benefit from, you know, our riders at a Wilson Yards example when it comes on? So, you know, again, as you get closer, because right now I know it's bricks and mortar and steel and all of that and wood, but I would just be curious as right before the project close out, maybe to have the board briefed on, especially when you're doing entire stations, how technology will be upgraded and just will provide a whole different experience for the riders?
We will. We'll coordinate with our IT folks. We generally create a platform for them to come in and install all of this new technology. It is done in some cases through the contract. In some cases, it's done by separate contracts that are managed by the IT folks. But in any case, we will come back and make a joint presentation and integrate that into the construction report.
Yeah, I was at, and what made me think about it, Chris, I was at a meeting, and they were just talking about the importance of technology and how it's changed things in the last, 20 to 30 years. And the gentleman who was giving the presentation last night mentioned there was a time when you could find a pay booth or a pay phone. You can't find one today.
Yeah.
Just in terms of how technology has changed things, and it made me think about, as we continue to do work here, the investment in technology and how that's going to create a whole different experience for our riders. So
Well,
appreciate that.
I will say that we, in the technology world, I am an advocate for being on the cutting edge rather than the bleeding edge.
Yeah.
As a transit, we want to deliver reliable technology improvements to our customers, and then, we'll also work with IT, though, to make a presentation and integrate it in with this as these projects close.
That's great. Any additional questions for Chris?
I have a comment. I was looking through some of the past records of your summary statements that you've given. You've got an excellent record of being under budget and on time. I think you need to be congratulated.
Well, thank you very much. I have a great team, and they work hard to bring these projects in. We work very hard to integrate all phases of our program, finance right from the very beginning so that we have the right budget in the right place, engineering so that we engineer it properly, and then construction. So I appreciate your feelings on the matter, and we'll take them back to our staff and make sure they understand that the board appreciates their hard work.
All right. Greg, is there any new business to come before the board?
No, sir.
Well, before we adjourn, I would just like to, let everyone know this is Omar Brown's last board meeting. Omar is going to join Deloitte, and I wanted to just thank him for his service to CTA. I've enjoyed working with him, and congratulations. As I said to you earlier, I hope they don't have you traveling too much around the country. But again, it's just been great working with you, and again, congratulations and much, much success. Since there are no new business to come before the board, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.